Hey world, it's your girl Kasira Elvie, and I want you to tune in to my true podcast that airs at 8 p.m. every Monday, where I have inspirational women telling their inspirational story. We have rawness, realness, and true transparency. I'm here to help build a new community of sisterhood, unity, and let you women that think you by yourself, you're not, baby. So make sure you tune into my show. The story might just help you out to be able to heal, be able to understand other women, and just be there and also tell your testimony. Tune in at 8 p.m. My True Podcast on Mondays. Hey world, it's your girl Kasira Elvie, and this is My True Podcast. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I am super excited, as I always say, right? But I am super excited. Let me tell you why. Remember, I had spoken with you all last week about suffering and silence and things like that. I am so glad that I opened up and I talked about it because I learned that I am not alone. That is the best feeling in the world, to know that you are not alone. It helps you be able to deal with the matters at hand when someone else has been through it, or they're actually going through the same emotion. And even you both talking about it together helps you both try to come to a resolution at times, right? So I'm thankful for that. And also, I am thankful for the people that stood in the gaps for me, whether it was prayer, a kind word. If I reached out to you, I think that is awesome. I think that is great. I had mentioned about a matter as well, with just dealing with a couple of friends, and they are doing wonderful because we stood in the gaps. So remember, just because you may feel alone, you're not, and know that someone, besides someone, God never leaves you, nor does he forsake you. And in the midst of your storm, he will give you peace. So I had peace, you all. Matter of fact, I even woke up this morning feeling great. I feel like my shoulders was light. I felt like a feather. And so I am so grateful and thankful that he did that for me, because I told y'all, life be lifing. That is the 2024 slogan for Kasira. Life be lifing. Okay. Now, remember we was talking about our sister Yolanda Carter, who was on here also last week, about her rebirth. That also rebirthed me. It was a wonderful time. That was my first speaking event, by the way, you all. I was super nervous, but we did great. And it was so crazy because I didn't invite anybody really. I mean, invited you all and people on the page, but I didn't personally like invite people. And at the last minute, I was super excited about the flyer that Yolanda had sent me. And I was just sending it out to, my mom, my aunt, my besties. And to my surprise, my mother came, and I think that was very wonderful that she showed up. I'm glad that she was able to see her daughter in action, and the support was great. The support was great. And I'm gonna tell you this: when sometimes you think that a situation or a relationship cannot be restored, God does things in the funniest ways, and I have to just be transparent. Sometimes I used to be disappointed a little bit because I thought that my mom, didn't want to be involved, or, I've invited her to the show. And I understand some people, they don't want to be in the limelight, or discussing certain things. So I used to kind of beat myself up a little bit. And I think that's why I never tried to really invite her to major things. But that, for it to be my first speech, I'm glad that my mom got to see me. And I see the restoration within our relationship. And so I'm super excited about that. Now, also, your girl found out too yesterday. Things are really opening up for me. But I have been asked by an organization that I went with Yolanda, called We Care To Agency. And so the founder and executive director, she contacted me yesterday, and she stated that they have a luncheon for survivors, and I will be one of the honorees. So I am so glad. I am so happy. Remember, I told you all last week, and I've said it a couple of times, even on the women's support group page that I really don't tell my story that much no more publicly like that because I still deal with some things on the back end, and so I just didn't want anything to what's the right word? I didn't want anything to hinder my case, my fight that I've been battling, and I just cannot wait because just even opening up Friday of what I went through, just a bit of it, it felt good to get out. And so I'm truly thankful for that. I'm thanking God for the journey. We've been on the podcast for a year, you all. I'm starting to meet even more amazing women. And I have one lady, our inspirational woman at Evening today. I'm super excited. I can't wait to bring her on. But I met her through my journey of just, connecting with other women. And I tell you, they always say it's such a small world. It's true because the people I've connected with are connected with people I was already connected with. Like, we had our brother on here, Khalid. And so he's even connected with Yolanda and some other people that I am doing business with as well. So let's just go ahead and pray real quick. Father God, we thank you for this day. Lord Jesus, we just pray that you will let this let the show just flow and everything that needs to be said, Father God. And yeah, we just thank you, Father God. Amen. All right, you all. So my inspirational woman, like I told you, I met her even in one of my down moments when like I said, I was still getting, how should I say, I was still going through my healing process from the first time. Because sometimes you got more than one healing journey. And so I met her just on social media, and her story just touched me, and I finally reached out to her, and I'm super stoked. This lady, she is a high rank advocate with 10 years of 10-year plus experience with social services, and she has a group of facilitators. She's also an author. She has 2 books out now that is about Not by My Own, and another one that is The Girl with the Crooked Smile. I am super excited, my truth audience, to say, hey, with Deveraux.
Hello, you got it.
Yes, you that look tongue tied almost. Thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate that. I can't wait to get started and people could just hear your story and the incredible things that you are doing for the community, not just women, but just people in general. So thank you again. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Congratulations on being honored. I
Thank
heard
you.
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exciting.
And you know what? My favorite question that I love to start off with is who is Whit?
Well, I like that question because it's pretty open-ended. For me, I would say that Whit is very multi-passionate.
Mm,
I am, on paper, a holistic defense case manager. I'm an author, I'm an advocate, but really what I call myself is a servant leader. Everything that I feel like I'm doing is something that God put on my heart to do, is part of my purpose.
yeah.
So whether that is working with youth who are in the criminal justice system, or advocating for women who have been abused, or being an advocate as a mother, because I've been a mom since I was 18 years old. So I am a person who has so many different passions and doesn't want to be boxed in. So Wit is on a mission from God to just live this life very fully, very intentionally every day.
That is good. So with all of that, what brought you, with any life circumstances or anything, what brought you to this passion, this journey that God had placed you on?
Well, when I was a young girl, I grew up in Riverdale. So for people who are not from Illinois, that's like the south suburbs of Chicago. And I had met a young girl who was a foster child, and she had been, just trigger warning before I say this, it might be a little upsetting for people who hear it, but she had been placed in the foster system because her father had killed her mother and then kill himself. So it was a murder suicide.
Right.
And that really impacted me. I was only about 8 years old. And I remember running to my mom and telling her, like, we need to adopt her. She had told me how her social worker was the one who placed her in the safe house that she was in now with the foster parents. And I just always since then said that I wanted to help people as a social worker or somebody who worked with youth in some capacity. And part of the reason for that, aside from meeting her as a young girl, is I had been molested when I was a child. And I felt
Mhm.
like I didn't have anybody that I could talk to about it openly. So I wanted to be the voice for the voiceless at a very young age. But her situation is what really had me look into, okay, what is a social worker? What type of work does this person do if they're able to save you from such a horrific situation?
Wow. And you know what, for you to say you've always been advocating for people. But the thing that you did mention to me, and I don't know if we did talk about it, but for you saying that you were molested as a child, you didn't even think about yourself still. That's a servant, by the way. I have to learn that.
Yeah,
So I would have thought that maybe that would give you drive too. But do you mind talking about the abuse, any other abuse you went through as a child?
for sure. So something that I have been giving myself permission more is to talk about my upbringing. When I was first coming out and sharing my story about having experienced domestic violence, I was still trying to protect everybody else. So
Mm.
I was 5 when I was molested by a family member, and some family members knew, but they did not tell my mother. So I was afraid, and I didn't talk about it literally for until I was 30. So it happened at 5, and the first time I talked about it was at age 30. But
Wow.
having that experience happen and feeling unprotected, it also kind of warped my mind on what it meant to be intimate with somebody. It made me feel like in order to have someone like me, I needed to be intimate at an early age. So I did get into a relationship when I was 17 that was my first abusive, like physical abusive, intimate partner relationship. And
Okay.
from that relationship, I had my first daughter. So I feel like having experienced the molestation, not feeling comfortable to talk about it, feeling like I needed to bury it, and also I grew up in a very unstable environment where there was drug use and it was just very unstable. And sometimes people would say to me, well, you grew up in a two-parent household. I'm like, two-parent household does not necessarily equal healthy. I witnessed a lot of unhealthy conversations where they were arguing, cussing each other out, and I thought that it was normal for
Yeah.
each other to name call and degrade one another. And that's not, there's nothing healthy about that or normal. But seeing that and witnessing that, and even as a young girl, I do remember going to my grandmother's house. That was like my thing to do on the weekends, get away from my
Well, escape.
parents and my immediate siblings, my immediate family, going over to grandma. But on one particular weekend, 'cause she's the one who used to take me to church. That's how I came to have a relationship with Christ. It's through my grandmother. There was one particular Saturday leading into Sunday where I had just laid down, and then my grandmother got up and she went to my uncle's room next door and tried to shoot through the door because he was using drugs. And her way to try to get him to stop was literally to shoot.
Mhm.
And that was like early on trauma, compiled with I had already been exposed to molestation and growing up in a house where there was drug use. So it was a lot going on that I'm giving myself permission now, many years later to really talk about, to try to bridge the the gaps, because there were gaps in my story, and people would be like, well, how did this happen? And then this happened.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I like that. That's that's what I was telling people. Like some people know, but some don't. My story, and it's it is gas. When they be like, "What? You don't have all your kids?" Like what? Because it really is a long story.
Right.
And in detail, and some of the smallest things are the biggest details in the story. You
That's
know,
right.
and so I know when me and you was having our conversation pre-interview, I know we were speaking about PTSD. And when you're speaking about your trauma, do you mind talking a little bit about the PTSD as well, that how that came about?
Definitely. So early on, I had experienced that trauma, but in my family, the way that we cope with all of that is through laughter. We didn't know anything about therapy. We didn't know about any mental health treatment. Certainly, nobody talked about PTSD or given a name to what I had witnessed as being traumatic, but it was.
Mm,
And being in an abusive relationship, not once but twice, with both of my children's fathers, I what that is trauma in itself, the abuse, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse. But after getting out of those abusive relationships and starting to rebuild my life, I felt like I was in a much better space. So I started to date, and I would say in May of 2021, I was dating someone that I had just matched with on Hinge. I am not, you know, pumping them up to use,
yeah.
but that is how I met him. And on Hinge, we matched, and he was just a really great person. And we spent a lot of time together. And between May and September 1st, we were really close. But on September 1st, I call him my partner because we never got the opportunity to solidify a relationship. It was exclusive dating. But on September 1st, he was tragically killed here in Chicago while driving his daughter to school, like a issue of road rage. And unfortunately, that is what took me almost over the edge in terms of my mental health and formally being diagnosed with PTSD and
Mm,
uncomplicated grief, because I hadn't yet really grieved my father who had died during the pandemic 2020. And then that happened, and there is no way to really describe how it feels to lose somebody by murder. It's very unnatural, and it feels like you're not safe anywhere you go. So some of the symptoms that I was having that led to that diagnosis, I would be afraid to leave my house, having to make sure that I looked around the corner to make sure it was okay before my kids come out the door behind me. um, Literally being like feeling fear and panic anytime I was out, and having to look sideways behind me several times as I'm walking, like head
Nor-
on swivel, as they call it. I'm looking every way to make sure that nobody is just coming up behind me. But it got so bad that I was stuck in a place of mourning that wouldn't allow me to live, really. I was just very stuck. And when I found a therapist, I found her. She was actually an intern. And I like interns because they are hungry, they're ready, they are not burnt out, they're not jaded by the system. They really want to help you. And we went through this checklist, and then she told me, well, this is what I would say are your diagnoses, and here's the plan that I have. Is this something that you want to do? Is this something you agree with, even the diagnosis? I told her, I already know, but it feels good to put words to what I am experiencing.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? Let's listen into a little bit of the story now. To me, I think that I've been saying this a lot, and this is kind of negative, but you were suffering in silence for so long too, though, because it looks like you were still always taking care of others.
Oh, yeah, I got a
And
problem with that.
Me too. And you just have such this calming, humble, quiet spirit, right?
Thank
Like
you.
me, I'm rah rah sometimes. I mean, I'm loud. And you know, when you look at people sometimes, like I would look at you and you smile, and I would say, "Oh my God, like how do you like you're amazing." Like, have you had that moment in your life through all of that where I know you were saying you didn't want to go out the house, but it was one of those where I am just tired.
Oh yeah.
How you just get to that real point? Because we're taught to not be tired. We're taught not to show it. And one of the things I told in the speech Friday was resilience. I don't know why that word came to me when I was even describing Yolanda, and then I looked at my situation, and I hear your situation, and I know I had looked in the for the definition, and one of the things that stood out to me was how you bounce back.
Hmm.
Resilience is how you bounce back, and so I was also saying, you know, sometimes no matter how bad it is at times, like what we go through, if we were able to survive, it wasn't for us. It
Yep.
was for the next sister. And I am so glad that you are opening up again in regards to your story and helping people. And before we got on here, too, we had a conversation where we was talking about um, organizations and places that do offer help for mental illness. And remember, we was talking. I had mentioned that to you, and I said I had to tell y'all. I had to say this, y'all, because I know I'm not the only one. Have you ever been
Hmm.
to a situation where you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm tired. I'm ready. You know, nowadays we're scrolling on Facebook. I mean, or any type of social media, and we'll see somebody and they're talking, they're telling their story, or they're saying, I can help you, and da 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 da, and this is what I did, and right there when you get to the nitty gritty, they be like, if you want even more help, why don't you subscribe for 49.95? You know, everyone's telling you. I was like, sometimes that's really hard for people that are not financially capable or have the insurance to find the psychiatrist or the therapist
Yes.
or the life coach. Can you expound on the things that you experience and what you do with mental illness?
For sure. I want to speak to something that you mentioned about the word resilient as well.
Okay,
And if I ever get tired, because this all ties together.
good. Okay.
Definitely. Once all of that happened, especially once my partner was killed, that was the point where I had to pause because I had no other choice. It was like either I'm going to crash and burn or like I'm going to be bleeding on the people that I'm trying to help. Like I'm not
Mm,
going to be able to help them.
yeah.
So I did get to the point where there was actually a meme that I came across online that said, I desire to never be called resilient again. Because I was so angry at feeling like, oh, but Whitney, you always bounce back. You're always the one who is coming back stronger and on top. It's like, for once, I need some help. I
Yeah.
need somebody to be my advocate. I need somebody to stand in the gap for
Yes.
me.
Oh, you just
So
sound
I
good.
started getting upset really with the titles of things that are positive, but it's like, okay, I'm not in that space.
Yeah.
That PTSD, that uncomplicated grief, I was stuck. I didn't want to hear, oh, you'll get through this. Things are going to get better. You'll meet someone again. It's like, are you serious? So I went through a very angry phase that I decided I need to pause and really take care of my mental health. And by doing so, I came across many resources, some of which I share with you backstage through free resources like NAMI Chicago. So, NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have different sites set up all over the US. So, no matter if you're here in Illinois, because there's a NAMI Illinois, there's a NAMI of DuPage, there's a NAMI Chicago, it's all over. You just look for the National Alliance on Mental Illness or NAMI, NAMI, in your state, you'll be able to find something that is local because, as you shared, everyone doesn't have insurance. They may have Financial abuse is a real thing when you're trying to get out of an abusive relationship and maybe you were dependent upon your significant other financially and now you're trying to rebuild. You don't have the $49.95. You don't have the insurance.
Mm,
So until you get the insurance, they have sliding scale fees, they have free support groups that you can just pick a day of the week that is being offered. They have it virtual, they have it in person. But what I always share with people, even when I'm teaching the Becoming Your Own Advocate workshop that I have, is don't stop if you run into a therapist that doesn't mesh well with you. It's
yeah.
kind of like you need to interview these people to make sure you all are a good fit, but don't stop just if you meet somebody that's not a good fit for you. Because I've been in therapy off and on since my early 20s. I was a high risk pregnancy because I was depressed. And they have this scale, it's called a PHQ-9. It's really talking about your mood and how you've been feeling over the last 2 weeks. And everything that I answered was significantly high. So they assigned me a therapist, they assigned me a case manager, would come to my house every month to make sure that I was okay.
Mhm.
And I've been going through therapy off and on since then, but I've just now in my late 30s found the therapist that I feel is with me, that's going to challenge me, that's not just going to listen to me talk, but what we going to do? Like, help me. I need some next steps. I need something different than just talking. I've been doing something called brain spotting with my therapist, which I found on the Therapy for Black Girls site, which is a free podcast. So there are options out there. I don't want anyone to feel like if you don't have insurance or you don't have the finances, that you just don't have anywhere to go, because there are many resources available.
Good. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because one of the things I did try to express on the show a couple of times was, when you're on a platform as we are, you're right. It's like one of those, like, I need a break. I need to take care of me. And it really is sometimes a guilt at first. Like I literally had to learn too, like, to just not do nothing. Like, it's still a little battle because as a mom, you still got duties, as an adult, you got certain things you need to do as responsibilities of being an adult. But I have to say, when I took my break too, like at like August of last year, I took a couple of months and I just needed that. Like I needed that. And now I can do that. Like once I get off the show, I'm not gonna lie. When I get off the show, I'm done talking to my producer. I be excited that I got this moment to rest. Like I give Tuesday,
Yes.
I give myself I try to give me a day after the show because normally you're still working, try to get this together, networking with people, but taking that moment to yourself, I've been learning that it works. Now,
Yes.
the funny part about it is some people don't understand because I am that person. Every time my phone rings, I'm an answer. If
Mm,
you didn't answer me, I must went to went somewhere in the house and then I come back, I see my phone, I'm calling you right back. I had to learn how to not answer my phone. That was so hard for me not to answer my phone.
yeah.
That's so hard. But one of the things that I'm also glad that you said that, and so what I want to do um, is definitely put that information on the comments, you all, after the show. So if you're interested in trying to get some help, you were interested in hearing what Whit was talking about, I will be sharing that information. But I also wanted to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about the things that you do. Well, I'm looking at time. What we're gonna do, because I want to hear him come back. We're gonna go to our commercial break, and we'll be back with Whit Deveraux. All right, catch you in a few.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really want to start it off, Kasira Potts, by you saying, who is Kasira? Tell me, who is she? Who is Kasira? I'm you. I'm that woman who has been broken, angry, sad, depressed, confused, lost, and even ashamed. But then I'm a mother, daughter, wife. I am bold. I am courageous. I am caring and a loving woman. I am a woman who finally took my cares to God. And He, the great I am, started to heal me and show me how beautifully I was made. Now, what will your show be about? What the show will be about? It's all about healing, growth, and also building a sisterhood, a unity, and a community. Yes. See, it's showing the power of God through people's testimonies. So, let me ask you this. Why did you want to start your group? What made you start your group? I'm a survivor from an abusive marriage. And within my journey of healing along the way, I met and realized women already in my life we had so much in common. And they had amazing stories, especially how they overcame. So I felt God placed on my heart to start the group so other women could know that they are not alone. I felt like women can help heal each other by just telling their own truth, their own testimonies. So, with this group, how do you intend to help other women on their healing journey? Well, to me it's easy. I reassure them that they are not alone. Help them to remember God made them for a reason. Remind them that they are strong, and also help them to accept and embrace their truth. Because even in the Bible, God says, the truth will set you free. All right, world and ladies, and maybe gentlemen, thank you for tuning in with my show. I love you all. Come back. Got more testimonies for you. Peace. Don't forget to tune in. See you, girl. Peace. Great cat. Oh, I'm so sorry, you.
Is that your cat?
I'm so sorry.
Man is out there, but I
Yes,
understand.
she just came and bothered me. She scared me, actually. Well, I want to talk about your flyer. If we could just go ahead, and I'm just going to let you take the lead and explain everything to the audience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as Kasira mentioned earlier, I am an author and advocate. I offer different workshops. Some of my signature topics are connected to the books that I have written. In total, I have written 5 books. 3 are co-authored, so I don't always talk about those, but I have connected them into my signature topics. The main books that I promote are the ones that I have the full rights to, which is Not by My Own and The Girl with the Crooked Smile. So I'll talk about each book and then the signature topics and how they connect. So Not by My Own, that's the book that I first wrote. It is pretty much my life story, but I made it into fiction to protect the names and the individuals that I was speaking about because I was not trying to get sued. So Not by My Own is talking about overcoming domestic violence, teenage pregnancy, as well as depression, because that was something that I have struggled with all throughout my life. And in connection to that, being a teenager, I I put together this teen dating violence awareness 101 workshop, the Becoming Your Own Advocate, and then the Right with Whit. All of those were birthed from Not by My Own because people were asking me, well, can you come to my school? Can you come to my parent advisory council? Can you talk to the kids in the after school program? and tell them about not only your story, but some ways we can identify teen dating violence and how to prevent it, or if you're in that type of relationship, how to get out. And that goes along with becoming your own advocate, which I have two different ways to become your own advocate, whether that is for domestic violence or for navigating mental health systems, because as we talked about, that can be hard trying to do it all by yourself. And then the Right with Whit, I have done that for different schools and nonprofits because people want to learn, well, how do I get started with writing a book? And that's what I created. And then the affirmations and apologies, that came from The Girl with the Crooked Smile. That is a chapter in the short story children's book that I wrote because the whole point of it is talking to kids about how to have positive self-esteem. And if you like a girl, not talking about her or not hitting her. So I really wanted to start that conversation early in a non-threatening way for kids to get it. And then Not by My Own graduates from that. And then that last one, the Pray, Prepare, Lead. I have a PR book that I did with a nonprofit agency, Blacks in Nonprofits. And that's really talking about how to get your book or your content in front of the right people with marketing and PR, media, things of that nature. So we can work together either by going to my website, which is whitdeveraux.com up there, or you can email me, info@whitdeveraux.com, or you can DM me. That's how we connected.
Yeah.
And I will make sure that we get scheduled to talk it all through.
Great. And you know what? I'm a couple of those. I am definitely going with right with Wit because I know that there's a book inside of me.
Yes.
Started it, and I'm like, where do I start though? And let me tell you why I mean, where do I start? Yes, I'm gonna admit, you all, the older I got, I started liking reading the Bible. But I've never been a person that liked reading. I had to confess to somebody a couple of weeks ago, like I don't think in my adult life I have ever finished a book. And then, even writing, I get told that I'm a good writer, but I don't like writing. And I remember when
Mm.
I was like, somebody's like, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. I said, okay, I'm gonna write a book. And I said, but I told them, this person that, and they was like, well, have you ever thought about just getting a recorder? So I
Right.
bought a recorder. I started years ago. It is so funny. I started years ago, and I think I found the recorder about, it's been 5 years now since me and my husband separated. So I remember like I finally picked up the recorder and I'm like listening to it and I am bawling. Like just to go
Oh.
back. Have you ever just went sometimes like sometimes you have amnesia, your past
Mm-hmm.
trauma. At times you know how to kind of block it out. Like you start healing, you start doing things better, like living your life. And sometimes certain things just get lost. Like even when I was talking about stuff Friday, and I was like listening to it, and the part that I listened to was when I was crying so hard. It sounded like I was speaking Spanish. That's how I was crying while I
Oh.
was talking. And that was a time when I found out that my husband was with another woman,
Mm.
was pregnant. And I was like, God. And when I listen to it now, I'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you, God. Because that was when you are in
Deliverance.
your sinking place, your dark place, you sometimes you just feel like it's never gonna end. This pain is never gonna go away. But
Mm-hmm.
Lord, when God sets you free, that's
Yes.
the best feeling ever. And it's a couple of things I wanted to hit on because I remember when I first started my show. Last year I had, matter of fact, it was I think it was when me and my best friends were on and we were talking about dang, I can't even think of the title. But we were talking about, parents in a household, single moms and people that were raised in a two-parent household. And one of the things
Yes.
that they had mentioned was, not all two-parent households, like you said, was healthy. So I'm glad
I'm
you
glad you
pointed
brought
that
that
out.
back up. Yeah.
I'm so glad you pointed that out because that's so true. And just when things are just coming to my mind right now, what I want to think about when I want to talk about this teen dating awareness, violence awareness. And matter of fact, our brother Khalid, I love that man. That man is awesome. He is amazing. But we was talking about generational curses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about how, like we was talking about his story and how the cycle just keeps going, right?
Yep.
And then I know when I started speaking about it, and I was like, well, you know what? I didn't witness my mom go through any type of domestic violence. My mom didn't play that. She ain't had no man. She did not date when I was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my grandmother was a victim once upon in her life, and she became a survivor,
Yep.
and other people. So sometimes that curse can just skip a generation.
Right.
And so what I fear now, because I have three daughters, and unfortunately, like I didn't have to. That's a lie. Take that back. I did. I had an episode when I was dated in my teens, but that is what's so fearful for me, because at that age, you be smelling yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you
Not
get
listening.
right? How do you get to the teens with this awareness? How do you get their mind to click and say, okay, I know I deserve better. This is a red flag. I'm going to avoid that. What do you do to get the teens' attention?
Well, I used to, when I first started doing it, I used to take my kids with me. And
Mm,
sometimes the kids, the teenagers, seeing my teen and my younger daughter with me, they would say, well, can we ask them questions too? And so
mm,
hearing from people that were around their age also made them feel comfortable. But I also look like a kid too.
We're
So,
Asian fine like wine.
yeah, thank you. So, like, that helps a bit when I start talking to them and I just openly share, like, this is what happened. If these things happen to you, and I have like a behind the wheel story that I talk about. And that's in my book, not by my own, but I always share it when I'm doing the Teen Dating Violence Awareness 101 because it seemed like innocent in my mind at the time. I was driving with my boyfriend and we got into an argument. I can't even remember what we were arguing about. It's so long ago and really small. But he took the back of my head and started honking the horn with it. But I was driving.
Mm,
And at the time, he just laughed about it and I didn't know how to respond. But I start out like talking about things that happened to me when I was talking to a young boy and the excessive text messaging. Like nobody's that interested in you and needing to know who you with, where you are at all times, how you dress, and wanting to control you. I always talk to them about the power and control wheel. And for teen dating violence, they have their own separate wheel that's different from the general power and control wheel. So it really speaks to this generation and making it more common, like the whole text messaging thing. When I was coming up, I think text messaging wasn't free until after 9 or something. Like you couldn't talk to
mm.
people until after 9 p.m. Like,
People that had Sprint, they was
yeah.
excited.
So like now they have modernized it to make it more relatable. But those are some of the ways that I have just made them feel more comfortable, but I also feel like that's my gifts because I also work with, we call them emerging adults, teens that are male and female that are 18, 19, 20, all the way to 25. Those are the clients that I work with now. And I just talk to them like regular people. I don't try to
Yeah.
make it seem like I'm above them. Like I talk to them like a peer. Like I've been there. I'm not here to judge you. Here are some things. I may give them a book or something for free just to try to encourage them because some people will not talk to, or most kids will not really tell their parents, but they need to have a safe space to go to talk about what's really going on. So I think that's just a gift that I have. Like random people come up and talk to me and share stuff,
I
and
can relate.
I don't judge them. So that's just the gift that I have, and I thank God for.
And I say, and this is what I say, and what I live by now. We always told, don't tell your business outside the household,
Mm-hmm.
or stay in the child's place. And I say now, if my aunts, like, now I'm solidified grown, like they tell you
Yes.
stories, you be like, what? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we're starting to be in a generation where we open up and tell our kids our business.
Yes,
Be-
absolutely.
Because I will save you. If my mom, let me tell you this. And when we talk about generational occurrences, sometimes it's not curses, just some things happen generational. So
Yeah.
I was dating this guy. I mean, we were back. I was in my mid-20s. I was like, we was Beyonce and Jay-Z. We was the bomb. I thought everything was amazing. I saw him every day. And I remember I told my grandmother, I said, grandmother, because you don't really bring nobody around your grandmother, your mom, your dad, your immediate family like that unless you really like them. And so I said,
Right.
oh, I'm ready for you to meet my grandmother. And so I remember he was supposed to meet my grandmother. And he stood me up. Now she didn't know he had
Mm.
stood me up a couple of times before in our relationship. And she said, mm-hmm. She like, he married. I said, grandma, no, he ain't married. I've been around the family, his kids. Matter of fact, some of his baby mamas. I've been around. He always talks about me. She's like, well, if he ain't married, he in a serious relationship. I don't even know how long it was maybe not even a week, 2 weeks. I don't know.
Grandmama
We
know.
found out that he was getting married, right? He was
Right.
right. But now I'm in my 20s, and now you want to tell me, yeah, that happened to such and such, and that happened to me. So it happened to my cousin, my aunties. I'm like, what the heck? If somebody would have told me, like, let me tell you, if that man stood you up for 2 days in a row or something like that, and he come up with a dramatic story, baby, something ain't right. And
Exactly.
if we would have heard that, I think I would have not bumped my head so many times because I've always
Yeah,
been a hard-headed kid. I like to learn the hard way. And now I tell
I
my kids,
agree.
like, you don't want to learn the hard way. I wish I would have listened. I wish somebody would have
That part
told me
too.
more until after I made the mistake and I'm grown. If you would have,
Mm-hmm.
so now I don't go all the way full details, by the way, everybody, but I am very realistic with my kids. If I'm crying, I'm sad, they're going to see me. If I'm happy, they're going to see me. Within the same time, they see me praying to God. They see me studying. I think those fundamentals will help children because I'm not going to lie. I am so nervous about my daughters.
Yeah,
And that's why I pray continuously, like, God, let that generational curse be broken with me in Jesus' name. That has to end
yes,
today
it
with
ends
me.
here.
And I'm glad you said you brought your daughters because as being a single parent, my kids have to go mostly everywhere with me. And
Mm-hmm.
I had them go with me to the rebirth with Yolanda,
Oh,
and they had
nice.
a great time. And so I'm glad you said that because now it makes me more comfortable because sometimes I'd be like, I don't want my kids to come because some people like no, but they're good
Bring them.
behaved children. But you still in your mind, you like everybody gonna have the kids there. I don't want nobody to feel.
I think it's good to do it because you don't know what they're hearing outside of you. But at least if you're the one talking about it, they can hear it from you first and they can hear it in a different way instead of like finding out about how to date somebody through their friend who been dating people since they were in elementary school. Because my
Right.
daughters tell me all type of stories, and I'm like, oh my, well, let me talk to you
Yeah,
because
you are
I
so
don't
right.
want you learning from other people only. So I think
Yeah.
it's good that you brought them to that rebirth. That's like firsthand, because my kids have been able to witness Yolanda's story as well. She and I served on the domestic violence subcommittee, and I would bring my kids with me. So they know about the one eye witness, her story, and all of that. And I think it's good exposure. You're
Yeah.
doing it in an appropriate manner. You're not trying to be overdoing it, too raunchy, or doing too much. It's
Yeah.
letting
Yeah.
them know in an appropriate manner, healthy dating, healthy relationships, what to look for if it's not healthy, and how they can get out before having to go through what we did.
Okay. There's two things I hear that I want to talk about. I want to say real quick. If you can give us, or the teens, or the moms be able to, or the fathers, because we do have males that watch the show
Hmm.
as well. If you can give us at least 3 warning signs we can tell our children to avoid while dating.
Oh, yes. So, one of them I mentioned is the excessive text messaging. So, if a person, male or female, because as you said, sometimes males are actually the victims in the abusive relationship. I have worked in different settings where I had to work with women who had caused harm as well as men. So one of them is the excessive texting. Where are you? If you don't respond to them in a timely fashion, multiple calls, trying to control how you dress. Another one is isolation. So if and this can be for a young person or an older adult, if a person is trying to control who you're around to the point where they don't want you around your family that you know is good for you, your friends that you know are good for you, isolation is a way to continue the abusive pattern. So if they're trying to tell you, oh, that person is just jealous of you, they're jealous of our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be with them, all you need is me, that's another warning sign. So the calling, trying to control you, it's all rooted in control. The isolation, nobody will ever want you. But also, I would say name calling, because as I mentioned earlier, being in that two-parent household, my parents always told us we were staying together for the children, but we were miserable. Like y'all saying y'all stand together for us, but we're miserable. We're not
Right.
happy
Mm-hmm.
watching you all call each other names, watching you all yell and scream. So if a person is always talking down to you, whether this is a teenager or an older adult, they're calling you stupid, ugly, calling you the B word, whatever the case is, and trying to act like they're not playing. So you need to take all of those things very seriously, because somebody who loves you, they don't want to control you, they don't want to isolate you. They know that you need your own time as well as time with them. Somebody is not that loves you is not going to want to monopolize all of your free time. So those are some warning signs, whether you are a teenager or an older adult.
I like that. Thank you so much. And I
You're
know when we
welcome.
were having a conversation again before, and if you can elaborate on that, and you had said I had to pause life. What does that mean? I know we talked a little bit,
Oh
but if
yes.
pausing life.
And that pause was so necessary. So shortly after losing my partner and starting the therapy where I was diagnosed with the PTSD and uncomplicated grief, we have to keep in mind that I had already been dealing with the grief of my father. And even as a young person, a young child, a teenager, I had struggled with anxiety and depression. So all of this was compounded while trying to be a business owner. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did during the pause is I completely got off of social media. So it looks like I was present, but I logged out at everything. I deactivated some accounts like Instagram. I still haven't reactivated that. And instead of being on there, I started praying more, meditating more, journaling, and even talking to God like out loud. Like some people say, well, you can't question God. And I always tell them, like, you need to read Psalms, that whole book. David is out there like, man, God, where you at? I know you here, but I love you. He go,
Yes.
come, come. But he's actually verbalizing. So I had to
Yes.
verbalize. God, why would you send somebody into my life that was only going to be here for such a short time? Like, what is the meaning of this?
Yeah.
So I had very honest, raw conversations with God. And later, through that healing process, He revealed things to me. I deactivated my website. So I was no longer doing workshops. I was no longer selling books. If you wanted to get my book, it had to be on Amazon. It was not on my website. Everything was deactivated, put on pause. And I made a daily practice of there is a process called emotional freedom technique. It's like tapping on different points in the body to release. And basically, you're just talking about how you feel, getting it out. I think that was the most important thing, because when you're going through so much, you want to keep it in.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to verbalize it. I needed to write it. I needed to scream it. I needed to shout it. I needed to sit with my feelings instead of burying it. I needed to, instead of trying to hide my tears from my kids, I allowed them to see me go through the grieving process so they could learn, oh, it's healthy to be sad. It's healthy to feel angry. It's healthy. You don't want to get stuck there, but you do
Yeah.
need to feel it and experience it. So I am grateful for the pause because during that pause, I really got in touch with God, like for real, for real. I always knew him. Like I've been saved since 7, but I really got to know him in a deeper place. It's
Yeah.
one of those seasons of ugly trust. We're like, okay, God, I trust you, but I need you to help me with my unbelief. I need you to show up and demonstrate your power. But I did not come back into doing things until late 2022, 2023. So I took like a year and a half of very intentional healing where I was not trying to serve anybody. I got off of all the committees I was on. I shut down my PR business. I closed my nonprofit and I just focused on me. I made sure that all of those people had referrals and resources, so I didn't leave them hanging, but
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't have it for them.
Yeah.
So I paused until I felt ready to come back, and now here I am.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Whit Deveraux, thank you so much. I am so glad that I heard your story and some of the words that you said that I've been saying and let me know that I am not alone and
Yeah,
confirmation from God. I appreciate you so much for joining my platform. I am
thank
so
you.
glad that we have connected. We're going to do more things together. Everybody, we're going
Absolutely.
to say, see you later, Whit. Thank you
Thank
again.
you so much. Y'all have a good night.
You too. All right, I'm your girl, Kasira Elvie. This is My True Podcast. Catch you next week. Peace out.